Future. I'm Ada Harden, Volunteer Resource Specialist for AISD. It's Your Future is a program for AISD students and others who want to learn more about specific career fields. People from all walks of life will be here to share some of their experiences with you on our program, and we hope that our guests will help you become more aware of what you can do now to plan for the kind of future you want. You know, it's nice to listen to people and how they shaped their lives and how they made it. And listening to these people will give you a better idea about planning your future. We have a very special person with us on our show. She's one who's she is very familiar with the communication industry and behind the camera. A very lovely, lovely young lady, Miss Carolyn Tyler. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you, because I know you're so busy, just so busy. We're so happy that you could stop by and share with us some of your experience in the communication field and to tell some of our students about some of the things they need to start thinking about and some of the things they need to start doing to get prepared. Come on, let's talk about that.
All right.
Where did you start? First, receive your training for communications?
Well, let me back up just a little bit, and I'll tell how I first got interested basically in the field. And when I was in high school, my mother was pushing me to do something to develop my confidence and that sort of thing. And she said, get into speech and debate. And I'm sure in the AISD there are all sorts of speech and debate clubs, forensics, National Forensic League, and that's what I became involved in. And that taught me, I think, how to become used to my voice and speaking in front of people and developing some confidence and poise and that sort of thing. And from there I became interested in going a step further than that as far as a career. I knew I couldn't, I didn't think I could make a career standing up and giving a speech somewhere, a professional speech maker, but I wanted to be able to develop my voice because people were telling me that I had a nice speaking voice and that sort of thing. And I also was very interested in television like all kids. You know, I was always watching and watched a lot of news. I'm from Wyoming, Cheyenne, and out in Wyoming we have only 2 television stations, and so because of that we run programming from all of the networks. So instead of just, you know, having a CBS affiliate, we ran the news from ABC, CBS, NBC. So I got a chance to see all of the different newscasters and their styles and that sort of thing. And there was a local newscaster in Denver, a woman named Raynelda Muse, who's now with CNN, Ted Turner's station in Atlanta. And she was my idol. I'd watch her all the time, and I said, I want to do that. And that's how I first became interested.
That's wonderful. So she sort of served as a role model for you. When did you first become interested, though? What age would you say you were?
I was probably in high school when I first started getting into the speech and debate. That's when before that I never really gave a career too much of a thought. I said, well, maybe I'll be a teacher, or, you know, I had nebulous plans just kind of in the back of my mind. I knew I wanted some kind of career. I never saw myself as just being a housewife, although there's nothing wrong with that. But I never saw that for myself anyway.
Right. You've got such beautiful features and what have you. You really don't need to be just a housewife. You need to be exactly where you are for the camera. Just a beautiful young lady. And we're very proud of you here in Austin. We're so happy that you chose Austin to come into Channel 7. How long have you been with Channel 7?
A little over a year. I came here in October of last year.
And you like it?
Getting used to it, enjoying it. The weather is the hardest thing for me to cope with.
Really?
The heat in the summer, the heat and humidity.
Oh, really? So
I'm
it's
used
not
to the
like
northern
that
climate.
Wyoming's not
No.
like that? What's the average then, weather-wise, in summertime?
Oh, in the summertime, probably in the 70s, maybe
lovely.
80s. You know, it doesn't. We don't get the 100-degree temperatures like here.
Well, yeah, Austin gets just a little warm around here.
And for the kind of job where you're always supposed to look crisp and nice and neat, and you're getting in and out of the car and in and out of buildings and interviewing people, it's not as if you're going from your air-conditioned home to your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned office and staying there all day. We're out in that heat and having to work with it and deal with it, and can be difficult.
Yeah, I imagine so.
But I'm not complaining.
No, I think you're doing a beautiful job. I was just wondering, you know, about, tell us a bit, we talked a few moments ago about how you learned, right, to read the news or to prepare your news. You know, I always thought that you go in maybe 15 minutes before airtime and then you're off right after that, but you said no, you spend, it's an 8-hour-a-day job. What do you do?
And sometimes more than 8 hours. Yeah. Well, it depends. If you are, I can talk about the reporting and the anchoring because I do both, and so, you know, each is a little bit different. Reporting, you don't really have a typical day, but if there were a typical day, you would come in about perhaps 9 o'clock in the morning, and we have an assignments editor who helps you, you know, choose the stories that you're going to be covering that day, and sometimes it might just be an idea. Let's check on the crime rate in Austin, or let's do a story on how growth is impacting the school district or whatever. And from there, you are expected to take that idea and make the necessary calls and get your interviews lined up and, you know, take it from there. And so that takes a couple of hours right there, just running around and getting that lined up. And the thing that I think people don't realize, they think that, yes, when they just see us and we're standing there, that someone else has done all that background work. But we come back once we've gathered our information, and we have to write the story. We have to try to condense the 2 or 3 hours that we spent out there on an interview down to the 90 seconds that an average news story is going to take. So we do the writing, and we sit there with the photographers, and they edit, and we're telling them which pictures we'd like to go with which part of our copy that we've written. And so that's what takes up all that time, all the writing and background work.
Oh, so it's important to know how to write well and to communicate well. And
you can't get away without it. The whole job is built around that.
That's wonderful. Then, okay, in your preparations for your shows or what have you, your articles on, what have you, tell me, how do you never seem to have any kind of papers or anything like that?
For anchoring?
Yeah. How does that happen? I know you don't remember all that.
Well, we do have a script. We also have a teleprompter, which is sort of like electronic cue cards.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's a simple way of explaining it. And we have our script to back us up. We have that sitting there on the desk. But the teleprompter allows you, it's right on the camera so that you can look right into the camera as if you are directly communicating with the folks at home, but actually the words are rolling for you so that you can read them. Yes, we are reading. We are not memorizing a half an hour's worth of news. We're reading.
So you have to read very well too.
Yes, and the trick is also, I think, to not come across as if you're reading. You know, that you are trying to communicate. You're trying to bring some life and some color to the words at the same time.
That is marvelous. And did you learn that in school, or did you get that on the job? You said something about...
I think you get that on the job. School gives you the basics, the background that you need. I went to the University of Wyoming, which is in Laramie, and was a journalism major. And so they help hone your writing skills and that sort of thing. But as far as the hands-on experience, you have to get right out there on the job and you know, and learn.
I see you in a lot of different capacities in terms of the stories that you cover. Tell me, what would you think would be one of the most exciting ones you've covered? Stories that you thought about that?
Exciting? No, I can't really.
What do I mean about exciting?
I once interviewed Jimmy Carter's brother Billy when he was at the height of his good old boy status, and he had his Billy beer, and he was that was one of the more interesting interviews that I've done. In Minnesota, after I got out of graduated from the University of Wyoming, I went to Minnesota to work, and a lot of political figures there like Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale and people like that I've had a chance to interview that have been interesting.
It's wonderful. Have you had any disappointments, though? Have you had any stories that you might not have been quite so proud to have to do?
Stories that I think are hard to do are follow-ups to murders or tragedies where, as a news person, it is your duty or obligation to go and cover that story, but at the same time you have empathy or sympathy for the family or the distraught relatives or whoever, and it's very hard to stick a mic in their face and, you know, how do you feel, sort of a thing. And those are hard to do, but you have to realize that it's part of your job. The hardest one since I've been in Austin was there was a car accident where 3 or 4 youths from Taylor were killed in an incident, and the 3 girls had their funeral at the same time.
Oh, yes.
And we were sent up there to cover that, and you know, had the cameras right there in the church. And I think some people felt that that was a violation of privacy. However, we had permission to be there, but at the same time you feel a little bit awkward about that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you had to receive permission from the family to do something like that.
If they had objections, we would not have been there.
I can see where that could be kind of difficult to do and deal with, but you do such a good job with what you're doing.
Thank you.
I know that you've done a lot of things for us here in the school district, and we're very, very pleased with that and happy and proud of you for that. But do you know of any other kind of, are you involved in any other kind of volunteer activities or services? Do you do any other thing volunteer? You know, you go into schools and you do presentations in classrooms and things of that nature.
Not really, not as far as an organized effort, but if people call me up and say, you know, we'd like for you to come and speak to us or whatever, I feel a certain degree of responsibility, I think, especially to young kids that are looking for role models or are looking for a sense of direction. And might sound corny, but I think that's something that we should do instead of just standing on the sidelines reporting about the community. I think, you know, we have an obligation to become involved, and so I do that. But I don't have, like I said, it's not an organized thing. If someone calls me and I can work it into my schedule, I'll go.
You'll go.
I'll go. I went to Rockdale, Texas not too long ago, which was very interesting. They had a social service organization that was having their annual scholarship fundraiser. They raised money for needy students to continue their education, and they had a fashion show and a benefit sort of a thing.
And what did you do there? I
was hosting that fashion show, which is a little different from news, but it worked out all right.
Well, I guess they figured you do a lot of talking, and you should be able to do that.
I think that's what they thought, yes.
How long did you think? How long does it take to do to prepare for one particular story? You know, or one story that you can do.
Well, for example, the story that I did last week on the proposed night classes for high school students that was going before the board on, I believe it was Wednesday or whatever. That takes that's your 8 hours. We basically do one story a day, which is, I think, enough. Maybe the bosses say more and more, but to really be able to do it well, because in that story, first I interviewed Marty Haugen with the district, the dropout prevention planner, and setting that up and waiting for her to return my call and getting over there. That, you know, and doing that took about, maybe 2 hours. And then I wanted to speak with a student who maybe had thought about dropping out but is still sticking with his education, and finding him and going to him on his job. He's connected with CVAE. And so we went to his job and talked with him, and that took another hour. And then we went to Crockett High School, where this student, Edward Pena, goes to school, and talked with the principal and shot some footage there. And so, I mean, the day is pretty involved. And then, like I said, in the afternoons we come back after laying all that background work, and I look at my videotapes with my photographer and the executive producer and discuss how can we best get across this story on the air? How can we structure it? And the executive producer is pretty good with giving you ideas of, I want to get up front right away. He says he likes to get the people involved, so right away he wanted to focus on the student, Edward Pena. You get him up at the front of the story, then go to the officials and this, that, or the other. So you sit and bandy some ideas back and forth until you decide how you're going to do the story. Then you sit down and write. And I'm not the fastest writer in the world. I like to pick and choose my words pretty carefully, and I like my story to have a little flavor to it if I can, spice it up. And so I take my time, and it usually will take me a couple of hours to get my story in the form that I want it, going back and forth with the executive producer who's correcting and scratching out words and saying, let's say it this way, and what do you think about that? And by the time you get that all approved, it could be 3:30, 4, 4:30 in the afternoon, depending on how late your last interview was. And then you go and cut a voice track to put your voice with the pictures, and from there the photographer takes it over, doing the editing. So that's the day right there. By then it's 6 and the news is on, you know.
Yeah, and it's time to do that. But then you seem to be, what do you do when you have to, you know, you're working on this particular story. You have so many stories that you cover within one newscasting period. How do you maintain those? How do you get to the, what happens, like, how do you get the stories, you know, other than that story that is already set for you? Like there's an accident, okay.
Well, we have a lot of people, other staff people that are working on things like that. We have people whose job it is to call all around, call the beats, call the police, the fire, EMS, DPS, finding out what sorts of things like that are happening in the city. And other people are writing some of those stories, other reporters, other writers, and that's how that's compiled.
Well, I didn't know whether you had to gather all the news yourself or what, how that happens.
And I'm not sure if you're talking about when I'm anchoring or when I'm reporting. When I'm anchoring all the different stories that we're reading.
The difference between the two of those two.
All right, what I just finished talking about, my day and going out and covering that story, that's when I am a reporter.
Okay.
Okay, on the days when I'm anchoring, other reporters are going out and reporting, and we're doing a lot of the background work on other stories that where you don't physically need to be there or can't be there, stories that might take place in other parts of the state. A murder in Dallas, a fire in San Antonio, a Salvadoran president comes to San Antonio or whatever. Maybe we get some tape of that from our affiliate station in San Antonio, but we have to write the copy. So we get the details from our wire services that we have, and it's up to us to then put that into 30 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever to put that on the air. So we're doing a lot of that on the days that we anchor. We are busy writing all the background stories.
So that's the difference in anchoring and reporting. Okay. Now, and how would you know about how, let's say, the weatherman, weatherman, woman in that case, do you also have to do any anchoring on that? Do you deal with that? Are they special people?
They are. That's Mike Chalinas would appreciate you calling him a special person, and Steve Rambo. Yes, they're responsible for the weather, basically. I mean, they prepare that themselves. So that's more like a separate entity from the news. It's part of the news department, but they prepare their own weathercast. And
so they strictly deal with that, no one else?
Yes, yes. And they've got their special equipment, the color radar and the different bits of information that they're compiling and gathering from all over. So that's what they do, and that's a lot of work too.
Right, and it takes a lot of people to put on the actual production in the show. How many people would you say are involved with, let's say, the newscast? The
6 o'clock newscast? Oh, quite a few.
You have camera people, and people that write.
Yeah, you've got the technical director, you have the news director, you have the producers, you have the man who runs the tapes, who has to roll them at the right times, you have your audio man, you have your floor director who's helping you who's telling you which cameras you're on and that sort of thing. You have the teleprompter operator who's running those electronic cue cards for you. You have your photographers. Heaven forbid. That's when you really find out how well your anchors can do, because boy,
that
when
must
that
be a
goes
kind
out.
of weird feeling, though, to have to depend
But
on
if you
that.
have written a lot of those stories,
You don't
which
miss
on the
much.
weekends we do, because we have less of a staff on the weekends, of course, than during the week, you're somewhat familiar with the stories. So if the teleprompter operator is sleeping or has the pages turned upside down or something like that, you can continue. And you do have your backup script right in front of you there on the desk.
Oh,
so,
well, you do? Oh, well,
yeah.
that's good.
So that's helping you
I
out.
kind of worry about that a little bit.
I do too. But one thing I would like for the students to think about, and that is that there are a lot more jobs behind the scenes in television than the faces that you see in front of the camera.
Right.
And if you're thinking about going into the field, I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but I'm just saying there are other job opportunities. They see me, or they see Steve Rambo or Pat Brown or whoever, and they think that is the end all and the be all of everything. And it's not. There are so many other jobs and other interesting jobs
And
that they could think about.
It takes all those people to make it happen, too.
And that's right. It's a team effort.
Well, you always look so beautiful and so immaculate on the show and everything. And I understand that you keep late hours even watching TV at home. Let me
Yes,
straighten that one out
I'm a
right
TV
now.
junkie. I really am. I watch a lot of TV.
But how do you maintain that physically?
Well, I'm into a weightlifting program.
Oh my goodness!
I pump a little iron, believe it or not, and that's a recent hobby of mine. I wouldn't call it a hobby because I really am trying to stick with it and discipline myself. But things like that, I spend a lot of quiet time to myself. Getting myself mentally psyched up. And I also have a lot of support from my family. I come from a very large family.
Oh, really?
8 brothers, 2 sisters.
Ooh.
Yes.
Well,
And,
mine's 9. There are
9
of
is
us.
quite a few.
Yeah, it is. Big family.
Yeah. So they keep me going. I've got one brother here and his wife. He's a freshman at UT Law School.
Wonderful.
And so I feel like I've got some,
family.
Some family around me. And I have a sister and a brother in Dallas.
Oh, neat.
And they come down to see me quite a bit. And I've got a brother who lives in California but has a lot of business in Dallas, so I get to see him. And we're pretty close-knit, and that helps. It really does.
Yes.
Keeps you going.
Great. That's wonderful. Nothing like having a family behind you like that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I have a big family, too. Well, now, let's talk about the fact that all of the stations, we talked about a few minutes ago. How many stations we have? 3?
Commercial.
3 commercial stations. What is the difference between commercial stations? And I think the boys and girls want to know that. The difference between commercial stations.
Well, basically, I'm just talking about the network affiliates, the ABC, CBS, and NBC. And then also, we recently have here in town KBVO, which is an independent station, just new on the market and starting to make some inroads. And so that's about it.
And the difference is the fact that commercial television versus cable television.
Or PBS.
The fact that commercials are industry, people that have commercials keep it going financially. And that is, that's also based on salary or whatever. We talked about a little bit of that. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about that? No? Yes?
Sure.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this is because a lot of times when I've gone out and did presentations in the schools, kids, one of the first questions they ask now, how much money do you make? I say, I don't make any because this is cable television and, not doing the show. And so...
Well, it can be lucrative. However, I think that a lot of people are looking at the salaries. They hear that, Barbara Walters is making, $1 million plus per year, or Connie Chung or Dan Rather, and they think that everyone in television is rolling in the dough, and that simply is not true. Especially when you're just starting out, or you're in a small market, and Austin is considered a small market. It is it 82, Tracy? 82 or 85, one of the two. And I think it's 82nd. It's moving up all the time, and that's based on your size and how many people are watching television, that sort of thing. New York would be 1, LA 2, Chicago 3, Philly 4, San Francisco, and so on and so forth. And people in those top 10 and top 20 markets are probably doing pretty well. But the bulk of the people in the business, you know, it's a myth that there's a lot of excuse me, there's a lot of hard work. When I first came out of school, and you know, I expected the world to be out there, you know, just waiting for me with open arms. You know, my professors had told me, you're black and you're female and that you're in great demand, and just go out there and you can do it or whatever. And it's not like that. You know, there are a million other people who are just as good as I am and want to do the same thing, and the competition is very stiff. So if students are thinking that they can just jump right in and start anchoring in a major market or reporting, they're sadly mistaken. It just doesn't work that way. And I started out as a floor director, a floor manager, on a part-time basis at a station in Minnesota, and I must have been making maybe $7,000 a year or something like that. I mean, which you can barely sustain yourself on, and that is not a glamorous job. I was washing the weatherboards and bringing water for the anchors and moving props and this, that, and the other. And I thought, well, this is what I went to college for, to bring somebody a glass of water when he barks at me. But that's, you have to pay your dues. You have to start. You have to look at that as a, you know, getting your foot in the door, and don't be discouraged about it. I just have the feeling sometimes when I'm talking with young kids that they just think the world is going to be handed to them on a silver platter, that there's not any work involved. And I want to stress that there is, that it's not the glamorous sort of a job that they might think it is.
I definitely agree. I do. And you said that so well, and I'm sure that I know students, you know, should be able to realize that. You just can't step out of college one day and onto the set like us. Well, I want to thank you so much. Our time is up. It just went so fast.
It did.
We really appreciate you coming by. And we want to remind our students that listening to Carolyn here on our show has actually been a very, very rewarding experience for me, and I hope that it has been for you. And we want you to remember that whatever you want to be, if you want to be an anchor person or reporter and be in communication, just remember that it's not going to be easy. It's a hard job, but you can make it. It's worth it because it's your future. Thank you.